If you are stuck and unable to figure out your map's layout, then in this tutorial you will learn a process of what to do when you can't quite figure out what your level should look, play, and flow like. This technique is a single section map layout design, and it allows you to go between an idea and implementation right away. Use this method when you can't figure out the layout and how a section of your map should look like. And this technique should not take place of a well-planned, thought-out, tested gameplay layout. I really like this method because it gives you something substantial to test and play very quickly without having to spend a lot of time in pre-production. So before we get started, let me cover a quick start overview of how this technique works, and then we'll go through in more detail. First, you want to find an interesting photo reference. This photo reference should be of one single location, one section of a map that you think would work for your game type. You then want to take that single photo and create a simple one section layout. Here I went through just a couple of drawings for the top-down layout before I reached the final one, using that photo reference as a starting point. This probably took me no more than 10 minutes. You then jump in straight to the editor and begin the blocking with BSP brushes. You want to think of this single section as a fight yard or a deathmatch map, or a single site defusal or a hostage rescue map. Once you've blocked in a simple BSP layout, you then include gameplay elements such as buy zones, hostage rescue zones, bomb sites, spawn points, and you compile and playtest. And then you cycle between step 6 and step 7, where you iterate and playtest based on the feedback that you received when you played the map. So these are the 7 steps that we're going to cover in this video. Now, this entire technique relies on you picking one single section of the layout. You have to focus on one area of the map. This single section of the layout can be A site, B site, any hostage rescue location, CT or T spawn, middle, left or right pathways, or any choke point. So this entire tutorial is not focused on creating and blocking in an entire layout. You're just picking one single section and you are sticking with that one section until you get something playable inside the game. So let's begin. Since I already have a photo reference and a top-down layout, I begin by starting a new map, saving that map, and I begin by creating a top-down floor plan, using the top-down layout as my guide. I usually start off from the attacking team first, and in this case it's the T team. I begin with their spawn point, use a simple BSP brush, insert a player reference scale that will help me judge proportion and space inside the map, and from there I expand to the rest of the layout. In these beginning stages, I am only focused on the floor plan, the layout. I'm not including any walls, no ceiling, and I'm only concerned with blocking in the top-down layout as I see it in my drawing. For this entire process, I use developer textures. This helps me to keep focused on the BSP layout and not get sidetracked of trying to texture. Here I expand to include stairs that will add additional height element into the layout. As you draw your top-down layouts, it's hard to show the height variation that you want within the map, so you just have to keep that in mind as you draw your top-down layouts, where the layout height is going to change and how you're going to introduce that into your map. This beginning layout process is fairly simple. You're looking at your top-down drawing and you're trying to mimic the layout from the piece of paper inside the editor. I use the top viewport a lot to get the general flow as I see it in the drawing. And once I've inserted that first brush, I go in the top viewport and duplicate that brush across the entire level, jumping back between the drawing and the editor while resizing all the duplicated brushes to match the layout. In these early stages, there's a lot of moving things around, and trying to gauge of how it looks both in the top-down view as well as in perspective view. I'm also aware of where each spawn point locations are going to be and guesstimating where the choke points are. Choke points are extremely important inside your map. They are locations where two teams meet in order to battle for control. And I have a couple of more tutorials that go more into depth about choke point design and principles of using choke points. And you can find the links to those two tutorials in the video description or at the bottom of the blog post. I want to stress the importance of this particular technique. You are not designing an entire gameplay layout. We are only focused on one single section that you got from a reference image. So the entire layout is more simplified than the actual map layout you would use for a full defusal or hostage rescue map. This one section of the map is usually a bomb site, a hostage rescue location, or a choke point. And your entire focus is to block in the layout of that one single section so you can jump inside the editor and playtest. So far, I've been entirely focused on only creating and blocking in the floor plan. This helps a lot to get the general flow of the map down. Once I have a floor plan blocked in, it will allow me to jump inside the map and quickly playtest for timing of each choke point. And here I am done with the general first pass floor plan, and I went ahead and created a big huge block of BSP brush and I hollowed it out to create a sky around the map, around the floor plan. I insert light environment entity and I already inserted two spawn positions for CT and T team, and this allows me to quickly compile and jump inside the map to play test the timing of each team and their arrival to choke points. I start first with the attacking team, which happens to be the T team, and I spawn, equip the knife, and I run to a choke point, and I time, looking at the clock above, of how long it takes for the T team to reach that choke point, and I keep respawning to test different choke points throughout the map, while noting the time that it takes to arrive there. I do this for every single choke point for the T team, and then I respawn for the CT side and do the same thing. And the goal is to make sure that the defending team arrives at a choke point slightly before the attacking team, so they have enough time to defend. After testing the choke point timing, it's time to make a few adjustments. First, I need to update light environment to make sure that the map is lit a little bit better. For this, I jump over to Google, type in CSGO skylist, and go to Valve's full skylist and light environment values. I use the Inferno lighting and I copy and paste all of the values from the site into light environment properties. This will give me exact same lighting as it is used in the Inferno map. Doing this allows you to quickly have a well-lit map without having to test out the values yourself. Remember, our entire focus is to have a playable section of a map and not spend too much time on making this map look good. I also insert environment cube map, which helps to produce accurate reflections in the map. And now it's time to go back and begin refining the BSP layout, the floor plan, based on the timing playtest that I just did. There were a few issues and timing of choke points for each team that I need to address. I need to make sure that the T's arrive a little later than the CT team, and I'm introducing a slight variation, a slight angle in the layout without changing the timing too much. The entire point right now is to begin to slightly modify and fix timing of the choke points for each team while beginning to introduce slight variation within the layout without changing it too much So I'm adjusting the timing of the choke points with additional layout variation. I am moving a few areas around, such as the stairs, moving it a little closer to the T spawn point, introducing a few additional pathways for CTs to get out of their CT spawn, and I am bringing back the skybox and recompiling so I can playtest those timing choke points again. So just as before, I spawn on the attacking team first, and I run, timing myself to the 3 main choke points. I note those times down, and I switch over to CT side and do the same thing. And in this iteration, the timing of the choke points is a lot better. Depending on your layout, you may need to iterate the floor plan and timing of the choke points a few times. In this example, I only did it twice. I built the map, timed the choke points, I iterate and changed the timing a bit, and then I playtested again. And I was happy with the second playtest. And once you're happy with the timing of the choke points, it's time to jump back into the level editor and begin to block in the layout of the level. This means including the walls and defining the boundaries of the map. After this, we can begin playtesting with bots. I start off by duplicating the floor and then resizing the brush for the size of the wall. And then I change the texture to a different developer texture, so I can easily tell the floor from the wall from the stairs. Since Hammer Editor doesn't have lighting view, everything tends to blend together. So by using different developer textures, I'm able to get a better read on the geometry of the level. This particular phase takes a little bit of time because you have to block in the boundaries of the entire map. I'm not including the ceiling because we're still going to use a big hollowed skybox. When I inserted that big skybox, I want to note that that's not actually how you would insert a skybox into your map. What I'm trying to do here is quickly get to playtesting. So I am not concerned with optimization of the brushes or optimizing the skybox. Eventually, you would try to section off various parts of the level and put a sky above just those sections. So you would never insert a big cube and hollow that out for a sky. So only do this when you are in the very beginning stages like this and you want to get to playtesting as soon as possible. So I've tried to speed up this section as much as I could because it does take the most amount of time within this technique. The entire workflow here is very repetitive. You duplicate a brush and then you resize that brush to fit within the confines of the other brushes, the floor plan. And then you repeat this process throughout the entire level until you have your entire map blocked off with the boundaries of the wall. At this point, I'm not very concerned with what this section is going to look like. I'm not doing an art pass, but I'm just blocking off with geometry to define the boundaries. My whole goal here is to jump into the map and playtest with other players or bots. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and pause and jump a little bit ahead until all the walls have been blocked in. This process continues until I block in all the boundaries. And here is the fully blocked in boundary of the map. I added a few columns, few indentations for cover, and I am almost set to begin playtesting. So before I compile and playtest, I need to insert at least 5 T spawns and 5 CT spawns. For this, I use function instance. This is an entity that calls upon another file to instance into the map. So in this case, this instance are 5 player spawns for both teams. So instead of inserting info player counter terrorist and info player terrorist 5 times, there's already a file that contains 5 spawns and they're imported into a map via function instance. I do this for both CT team and T team. And then I create individual buy zones for both teams. To create buy zones, it's very simple. You use a BSP brush with trigger texture, and then you turn that brush into a buy zone entity. And now it's time to bring back the skybox. Make sure that the entire layout is inside that skybox. Then compile and playtest. And this is where you can begin to playtest your layout. So I start off with the attacking team, with the terrorist team first. I purchase a weapon and I begin to rush each choke point to see how the round will play out. You won't need to spawn any bots because we already have info player terrorist and info player counter terrorist inserted into the map. So the bots get spawned automatically. And when you first compile and launch the map, basic navigation is built automatically. So bots will know where to go and what to do. I play a few full games on T team first. I continue to rush various choke points, either staying with the team or doing my own thing. I note down how many rounds the terrorist team won, and then I switch over to CT team and I do the same thing. So I'm testing and judging balance for both teams. I'm also noticing the timing of arrival for both teams. I want to make sure that the CT team arrives at each choke point slightly before the T team. And this is important for any defusal map. But if you were going to create a hostage rescue map, you switch the sides. The defending team should arrive at the choke point slightly before the attacking team. And now the thing I'm paying attention to is sightlines. I want to make sure that no one team can dominate long range across the entire map. I'm noticing a few issues of sightlines at a few choke points where CTs can see a little bit too far into that choke point. As well as I'm noticing a lot of problems with the upper level, the bridge, of some of the BSP brushes being too high. And I also need to add a few more additional cover positions. There are too many open spaces and too many long pathways. So as I'm playtesting, I am keeping notes of what I need to change and update within the layout. After this first initial playthrough, I now have a set of notes to modify the layout too. I begin by reducing some of the corridor width and minimizing sightlines, so each team cannot see all the way down from their spawn point. This requires to modify the entire layout, either make it shorter, make it longer, and just update all the BSP brushes while still maintaining the integrity, the essence of the layout. So the challenge is to maintain the timing of each choke point, but modify the layout slightly to introduce the update changes that I had from the playthrough and to improve on the feedback from playing the level. So some of the things I changed for this layout was moving the spawn point for T team a little closer, updating the sightline and the angle of the corridor so you can see all the way down as soon as you enter the corridor by moving the stairs a little bit off to the right and introducing a corner that you have to turn minimizes being able to see all the way down from spawn point position. I also reduce the width of the middle, give more of an angle to the curve of the middle choke point. I'm going to pause again, continue modifying the layout. So in this process, I am implementing all of the changes to make the layout better from the feedback of the playtest. So the changes I implemented was adjusting this bridge by lowering the guardrail so the player can see over it, minimizing some of the sight lines. Let me remove this sky so you can see better. Minimizing these sight lines so you can't see from T-spawn all the way down the hallway. Also, I've minimized the entry of this middle choke point, angled this area to offer a little bit more cover, and moved off this hallway. When T's go up the stairs, CT on the other side can't target them from this area, so I've created more of an angle and reduced the sight line from CT right over here. Another thing I updated was to add additional cover, these crates, putting more crates over here, another one over here so you can jump down from the top to bottom without hurting yourself, adding additional columns which also provide more cover, and adding a bomb site with a decal to show where to plant the bomb. I've also added additional stairs for the CT team and the T team to get up into the second floor. Again, all of these changes came from the playtest, and I can't stress enough how important it is to playtest as soon as possible so you can get those changes and implement them into the next iteration of your map. So now I am ready to playtest again and see how the new changes work. I save the map with DE_prefix for diffusal map type, and I compile the map again to jump inside the game and playtest. I start back up from the T side first, and I play a few games to see how the layout changes affect gameplay. I storm all of the choke points, and I try to balance to see how fun it is to play this layout, at the same time judging if it's fun to play. And I do this for both sides, for T side as well as for CT side. For few first iteration of the layout, I play with bots. This allows me to refine the layout as much as I can to make sure that it's fun to play before I try to get people to play it. I don't want to have real people waste their time for the first few iteration of the layout because a lot of times it's not very good. But once I've played through and iterated the layout maybe twice, 3 times, and I get a lot of fun from playing it with bots, then I know that real human players will probably have fun too. This playtest was a lot better than the first one. It was a lot more fun to play this particular version of the map. There was a lot more cover, the choke points were timed properly, and there was enough option for both CT team and T team to storm the bomb site. So I hope now you can see the iteration from an idea to a playable test map. You first block in the layout, the floor plan, time out the choke points, test those choke points. Then once you're happy with the timing of the choke points, you go back in, build the boundaries of the map, and then you playtest. Take notes based on the feedback that you get from the playtest. Come back into your map and iterate. Change the layout based on the feedback from the playtest. And then you playtest again. And then you do this iteration playtesting until you are satisfied with the layout. Here I switched over to the CT side and I attempt to play 2 different playstyles. First, I try to storm and rush the T side as well as flank them using some of the more up-close weapons. Then I tried to play more long range using sniping weapons such as using the AUG or AWP. This allows me to see which weapons tend to dominate the map, as in the end I want to make sure that the map supports both long range and close quarter combat, because most successful maps in Counter-Strike appeal to a variety of playing styles. You can use sniping weapons as well as more close-up weapons, and no one weapon or one specific playing style can dominate your map. So being able to design your layout and your map to appeal to a variety of playing styles will make the map a lot more playable, and it will appeal to a lot more different people due to the variety of strategy that each player can use. We have now reached the end of this tutorial, and what do you do next? How do you take this layout and turn it into a full playable completed map? Well, you have a couple of options. First, you can keep this map as one section layout. If you had a lot of fun and a single site, single hostage rescue, or a deathmatch map that you created is fun to play, then you keep it as is and you continue to refine, detail, and finish this map. This means texturing, refining the BSP brushes, adding props, and optimizing the map while keeping the same exact layout that you had fun in. Your second option is to expand to include this section as part of a larger layout. So this could be just A site. You would then introduce B site and combine A and B together. You would have to refine the layout and retime the choke points from each spawn position and create a full diffusal or hostage rescue map. This will take a lot more time and effort to implement, but you are at a very good starting position because you already have one section done and you know that this section is fun to play. So I hope this tutorial was helpful of taking an idea, one single reference image that you're inspired by, and getting something done inside the editor so you don't get stuck trying to create a full layout or a full playable map. This one section layout level design gameplay is extremely helpful, and any time where you feel resistance of trying to jump into the editor and create something, just follow this process, pick a single image, create a simple layout, focus on one section at a time, and get something playable inside the editor as quickly as you can to overcome your creative block.